Pastor ANSERE taught that whenever a major national disaster strikes, the first question people instinctively ask is why. Human beings naturally search for explanations, wanting some way to make sense of what feels senseless. So the sermon introduced a framework that helps us understand these very difficult moments. And the big question that always hangs in the air after a calamity is this: does God directly cause every disaster? The sermon made it clear that the answer is no. But to really understand why, Pastor ANSERE explained that we must begin by distinguishing between two different kinds of evil. He referenced that scripture separates moral evil from physical evil. Moral evil consists of crime, corruption, injustice, things that arise from human wickedness. Physical evil refers to calamity, catastrophes, and natural disasters. The sermon focused on this second category, physical evil, and then laid out 4 possible causes. Pastor ANSERE explained that the first potential cause of a physical calamity is divine judgment, but he emphasized that this category is extremely specific. It is not a label we can place on every disaster. The sermon referenced the book of Amos to frame this idea, reminding us that although God can be the cause of a calamity, scripture shows this only happens under very particular conditions. The sermon explained that divine judgment happens only when moral evil stops being an individual problem and becomes woven into the systems, culture, and institutions of a society. When corruption becomes deep, normalized, and systemic, then and only then can a calamity be understood as divine judgment. Next, the sermon shifted to the second major category, which Pastor ANSERE said is far more common: tragedies caused directly by human error. And this category itself has 2 forms. The first is negligence. Pastor ANSERE explained that negligence is not intentional harm. It is the failure to do what one is supposed to do. Scripture calls this a sin of omission, and these omissions, though small at first glance, can create devastating consequences. He illustrated this with examples: an engineer who fails to maintain a bridge, a pilot who neglects a crucial safety check, a city official who ignores the established rules. None of these acts are malicious, but their outcomes can still be deadly. The second form of human error is what the sermon called foolishness. Pastor ANSERE explained that foolishness is not a lack of intelligence. It is a lack of foresight, a failure to pause and consider the final consequences of one's actions. To drive home this point, he referenced the moment in scripture when Jesus was told that Pilate had slaughtered a group of Galileans. Jesus' response was striking. He insisted those people were not worse sinners than anyone else. The implication was clear. This was not divine judgment. It was a tragedy born out of one leader's cruelty and foolishness. The sermon then addressed the tragedies that seem to have no human cause at all. Pastor ANSERE explained that some calamities simply arise from the reality of living in a broken world. In that same passage, right after discussing Pilate's violence, Jesus himself brought up another tragedy: a tower in Siloam that had collapsed and killed 18 people. Again, Jesus emphasized that the victims were not being punished for their sins. The sermon explained that this type of tragedy is essentially pure misfortune, the result of time and chance. Sometimes people are simply in the wrong place at the wrong time, and the world's brokenness produces random accidents. These events are not God's judgment and not the result of any particular human mistake. They are the unpredictable outcomes of living in an imperfect creation. Pastor ANSERE brought the framework together by laying out the 4 causes of calamity. 1. Divine judgment, when systemic moral evil saturates a city. 2. Human negligence, sins of omission and failures to act. 3. Human foolishness, reckless decisions or abuses of power. 4. Accidents in a broken world, events caused by time and chance. And the sermon concluded with a powerful thought: if, as scripture suggests, many tragedies stem from preventable human errors or the randomness of a broken world, then perhaps the most pressing question is not simply why did this happen? The more important question is, how does understanding the cause of a tragedy shape our responsibility to prevent the next one? And that, Pastor ANSERE taught, is a question worth deep and sober reflection.